Hello and welcome. This is Corey Angela. Welcome to the End of Slavery Summit. I'm here with Nicholas Peter Urgero. Am I saying that correctly? I'm probably not.
I know
Urgero.
you should ask me beforehand. Yeah, it's Urgero.
Urgero. See, he knows better than me because he interviews everybody, and I don't. I'm not as professional as an interviewer as this guy. He's been interviewing everybody over the years too, way more than myself. And we're going to be talking about really important topics like inner work principles, natural law, health, which affects everybody. All these concepts are things that everybody deals with, perhaps, in their lives at some point in time, and we need to come to understand. We find out these are really important topics. Health. I mean, how much have we been talking about health in the past couple of years? And then natural law. This is a topic so many people are now starting to talk about because we realize how important it is. So, how about you introduce a little bit about yourself and what made you get involved with a lot of these topics?
Yeah. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for extending an invitation for me to come on here. It's truly an honor, and I definitely appreciate it so much. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It's awesome to be able to do this because I'm just
Thank
so used
you.
to doing interviews. So, being on the other side is also great. But just seeing some of the speakers that are also in this whole summit, it's just really, just really inspiring. And I just want to say thank you once again. And so yeah, just a little bit about me. I am Nicholas Peter Ugero. I am 30 years old. I live in Illinois. I have been just bouncing around from job to job. Right now, I'm working for a cleaning company. I'm just a normal kind of guy. I'm not a huge researcher, but I've gotten into just Zeitgeist, those documentaries, Hidden Secrets of Money.
Ooh,
In 2016, I got into that because of my brother, thank God. So that helped me out a lot. But then getting into gardening through James Corbett when he had that guerrilla gardening video that he made. So that was early 2017. I got into gardening. So I started doing that, getting more into health, organic stuff, non GMO, thinking
nice.
about health a lot more. And then in 2018, that's when I got introduced to Mark Passio through an Anarchast interview that Jeff Berwick did with him. I guess it was the second one that they did. And I watched some of it and I rewatched a couple months later. I was like, holy crap, what is this guy talking about? Like, I have no idea. I've never heard anyone say any of this stuff. So I got into his Demystifying the Occult. That was the first one I watched and just blowing my mind. I couldn't believe how powerful this information was, and I've never heard anything about it, even people in the truth community. So that really opened up the gates for me. And that was around the time 2017, 2018 was when I started making videos. I did like a James Corbett questions for Corbett. I was trying to ask him a question. So I just made a quick little video and so then yeah, I was just doing just normal, like just really crappy videos with my phone, and whether it was gardening or a product that I really liked. So I started doing that, and then I got into Camtasia software. My brother was able to download a free version for me. So that's when I started. I made a visualized podcast of Mark Passio's first podcast. So that took about 2 weeks for me to do that, and I wanted to keep doing that more and more, but I didn't do any more of those. But yeah, that's when I just started doing more interview or just more videos, more elaborate, more well produced, and yeah, then I got called to do an interview because I left a job, Now Foods, over temperature checks, and he was inspired by my video. So I started talking to him, and that's when I started doing a lot more interviews. So if you see my videos, that's what I'm doing. But yeah, I just like I'm trying to question everything that I see. I don't try to just be all and put all my eggs in one basket. I try to think for myself and be objective about things. And so yeah, I guess it's just that's I'm not used to doing intros about myself, obviously. So
No, no,
yeah.
it's great. And you've like experimented with different types of content, which I think is fantastic. Like you're not just doing interviews, you've done other types of content too. I saw you did a speech on the street, and I told you I wanted to mention it because I thought it was really cool. Like it takes courage to speak up and then to not like trip on your words and to say everything really concisely what people need to know. I mean, really, you summed up what people need to know, and that is natural law, right? You were talking in that principle about the simple concept of natural law, which most of the people there probably were unaware of, although their intent was in the right place. Like, yeah, we want freedom, we want truth, but how do we get there? And you sort of like really filled in all those gaps, I feel like.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, that was a little nerve wracking at first when I was thinking about going up there, but yeah,
I'm sure it is, but then once
yeah.
you get that energy and you start doing it, it's you start to get a little bit more better with it. And I think you and I as content creators, maybe we can ascribe to that to say like, wow, once you start doing it, you gather the practice necessary to keep going. And so for anybody who's new to natural law and these concepts, or even new to content creation, how could we introduce that to them?
The act of becoming a content creator themselves.
Yeah, and why
Um,
natural law? Why would it be important for them to look at that or talk about that on their channel like you have?
yeah, that's a very, very good question. Because I know I told you when I interviewed you that I didn't want to know the questions, so you're catching me off guard with all these, so I like it. Um, so the reason why for me natural law is so important is because I didn't just listen about it. I didn't just look about like watch videos or watch all these presentations by Mark Passo. I didn't just do that. I was actually applying it within my own life. So I worked at Aldi for about 6 months, 7 months. And within the first month or two, I realized obviously they're throwing out so much food. I couldn't stand it. I was already a gardener at the time, and I didn't do any pesticides or anything like that. So I was all about composting and stuff. So I thought to myself, well, you know what? I'm gonna start taking some of this. So I was taking it. I was composting some. I was eating some because some of it was still good. And then near the end, I was also donating to a local church that was literally within the same strip mall. So I was doing that. The supervisors were telling me, Nick, you can't do this. I agree with you. I think I mean, you're not doing anything wrong, but you're going to get in trouble and I'm going to get fired or whatever. So I don't want to risk it. I'm like, well, you can go ahead and tell the district manager or the manager. I don't care. I know not doing anything wrong. You obviously know that. So I'm going to keep doing it. I don't care. I'm not doing anything. I'm not purposely breaking anything in order to get it later because I know the process of them throwing stuff out. I didn't do anything like that. They already
Mhm.
threw out stuff without it being even damaged. The cereal box is broken, but the bag inside's still good. Oh, let's toss the whole thing out.
Wow.
So it didn't make any sense. So I was sticking to my guns. I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. So I was standing in truth. I ended up getting fired one morning when I was opening up. And they sat me down. They talked to me. They asked me what I did with the stuff. I told them flat out, I composted some, yada yada. And I told them legality doesn't equal morality. It's not this. It's not like
Yeah.
together. It's sometimes it is separate where one thing could be labeled as a right when it's really not. So I was speaking plainly to them, and I told them exactly how I thought, and so they ended up firing me. I had to grab my stuff, and I told the district manager. I told her, even if you guys didn't fire me after this conversation, I would have quit because I don't want to work for people like you because you're just good at following the rules and not
Mhm.
doing what's right. And I literally left that job on a Wednesday without any sort of job lined up because I didn't expect to get fired right away. And within that day, I was able to get my old job back, and I started on Friday. And I was making twice as much. I had a consistent schedule now, and I was making twice as much cash, basically. And if I was doing something wrong for that many months consistently and like unapologetically doing that, then how could I get rewarded in that sense? And it's just like the reason why natural law is so important is because I've applied it in my own life. That is just one example. There's many other examples. And
Yeah.
with this understanding, I've gained enough intuition to really, or I've gained more intuition to be able to kind of pinpoint certain actions I'm taking and certain results I'm getting. So I was recently stealing from Walmart, not like a couple months ago, because I was like, screw them. They're so big. They get slave labor all the time. F them. So I was doing that. I stole a little bit, probably like about around $80 or something like that. And then I was on the road and I got pulled over for speeding and I got an $80 citation. The guy let me off easy because I was going way faster than what he labeled it as.
Hmm.
But it basically added up or amounted to the same amount. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I guess it doesn't really matter whether or not it's Walmart or this different company just because I don't like them. So I'm not doing that anymore. Like, even though I think I'm kind of like Robin Hood in that sense, like, oh, I'll take some of this and then whatever savings I have, I'll donate it to some people, on like people on the street. But I've seen it enough times in my life to know that this is like I'm on the right track. And so it's very, very powerful. It's allowed me to have better opportunities in my life, not as much heartache. I'm learning lessons. I'm picking up on those small little things. So, and it's the way to get to freedom because if we're not learning this stuff, then we are going to fall into those traps of thinking, oh well, this is a right at this moment because we don't feel like it's good for the whatever our community or whatever else. Don't blow off fireworks here, yada yada yada. But it's about personal responsibility. We really boil it down. It's personal responsibility. You have to take responsibility for your own life, and that can be scary. And it's scary for me too at times. Sometimes I take the easy way out in some aspects, but it's still it's just still so fundamentally important because every person I've talked to about this stuff, they completely, for the most part, completely agree. They don't think that we need to get rid of government, but they still understand the principles that I'm laying out, and they understand that, and they think that it makes a lot of sense. So it's in terms of content creation, I think it's very valuable because it's just I've just seen in my like I said, I've seen in my own life. I know that this applies very well in reality, and I know that this is the way to make a difference. So I've been focusing more on that, getting content creators that are on the One Great Work Network and that know about this stuff, and some people that are like in that same ballpark, but they don't know really about it. So I think it's very valuable to do that because I mean I've already done other content on my channel, and this one's been the most inspiring for me. I feel like it's making the most difference compared to other things that I have created. So if people do want to get started with content creation, I think getting some user-friendly software, Wondershare Filmora is really, really good. It's pretty basic. You can get a good plan for not too much of an expense. And there's plenty of tutorials out there. There's so many tutorials you can just look up. But it's also you can just fiddle around, screen record yourself a couple minute video and then just start messing with some things. You see transitions, whatever, you can clip things up and splice it up, add an image. Just being organized in that sense too, like having your files named properly, having
Mm.
them in a certain folder, you know where to reach it if you need it. So as you know, my Windows on my computer is not activated, so I can't see previews of images. So for me, I have to really be specific on how I'm wording my files. Otherwise, I'm not gonna
Mm.
find it. So so yeah, just being really organized in that sense. Especially if you're starting from scratch, that's the best way to do it because then you can start making a folder and just be organized right from the beginning instead of having everything be jumbled in a big mess, and then you have to kind of work backwards just to get a good starting point. So Wondershare Filmora is great. Camtasia is also great. That was the first one I used. That's where I did Mark Passio's. I visualized his first podcast. So Camtasia is also excellent. And yeah, it's just about taking time. When I did the editing for that first podcast of Mark Passio's, you can see a visual difference of like the quality of my editing from the start to the end. I was getting a lot more in the groove. I was understanding different things. I was adding more information on top of that, different techniques. And so it can be scary. I've used to be such a shy person. I used to always be self-conscious. I didn't like speaking up. I never liked doing that. The only way I would do public talks or like class presentations, I love doing it in the dark. If it was like a slideshow, because you can't see me, I could feel more comfortable. So that's always I've always been a nervous kid. So, and you can see in my first videos that I'm I'm not as confident. You can totally
Mm.
tell. So it's all
Same
about
here.
recording yourself. And like Mark Passio says, it's good to just don't even post it. Just record yourself and watch it. Watch it back or listen back to it. You don't even have to do video. You can do just audio. Uh, Andre Mitty, who I just had on my channel, he just does basically strictly audio. That's all he does is audio podcasts, and it's a lot easier too. He doesn't have to do all this editing, all this elaborate stuff like I'm
Right.
doing. I'm adding a lot more stuff to my plate in that sense, and it's a lot more convoluted. It can be convoluted. It's a time consuming process. So you don't have to do it where your face is showing. But I definitely encourage people to use their real names because Mark Passio made a good point. It's like, what's there to hide? I mean, they already got even though this is a de-Googled phone, they still got all my stuff.
Right.
They already know who I am. They're already going to see my face anyway. It's like, I don't care. So,
Yeah.
me personally, I'm not in fear of it, even though I know that there's a risk. It is what it is. But yeah, I think it's something that we definitely need to do. I'm totally inspired by you with your age and the content that you're producing. It's just blowing me away. And I mean, especially when you start younger. The younger you're starting, the better it's going to be. You're going to get that ball rolling. It's just going to be a lot better. And
Mm.
there's so many people that are sitting on a lot of good information that just aren't speaking up, and they can do it in their own way. They don't like you said in our interview. Don't copy what someone else did. You can take inspiration from it, but then you got to put your own spin on it. It's your personality. You are yourself. You can take in information, but it's always good to do it in your own way. Like when I edit my interviews, I add a little humor into it. I add a little funny stuff, and I'm cracking up as I'm making it because it's enjoyable, and I try to have it where it's still serious. There are a lot of still serious things I put in there, but because it is a serious topic, but it's also good to just have it a little bit more entertaining. So that's just my personal spin, and I try not to, you know, put on a facade or anything like that. I try to just speak pretty plainly and, not fake it till I make it. I'm trying to just be genuine, and if
Yeah.
people resonate with that, then they resonate with that. And if they don't, then they don't.
Respect. Yeah, respect. I mean, that's great. I mean, authenticity, right? What we want is a world that is honest, not a world that is ran by people who are lying to us, which we find out, and so I respect that. You're walking the talk. You want honesty throughout, and so you're honest within, and you can sort of see that as natural law at work too, which we're going to talk about, sort of like that inner work process. But when you first started talking about natural law, sort of what came to mind was the idea of principles, living by principles. Because it seemed to me it's like I'm finding what I need to live by. You're finding your path. Like when you were mentioning your life experiences, sort of like, well, I did this and this is what happened. I did this is what happened. So I changed this behavior and now this happens. It's like I'm understanding what principles that I need to live by. And so I think that's great, and that's a process I think everybody goes through, whether they want to say it's objective or subjective, whatever. Everybody lives through some sort of principles, right? Because they know they shouldn't do certain things and they should do other things. And what we're talking about is behavior, right? Human behavior, and talking about the power systems that be. So what is natural law compared to man's law? Then, like, because if we're saying there's natural law, most people, they hear the word law, they think of systems of power and what's written on a fancy piece of paper. So what makes natural law different from man's law? And do you notice, is that where you got to understand how government works? Because you relate
Um,
to natural law in your own life. So I'm like sort of asking, like, where did you get the tie where it's like, okay, I understand it within my own life. Now I understand what fake law, it doesn't exist in my own life.
yeah, I know. I'm trying to think because I know that I was becoming more I've always been kind of anti-authority. If my dad told me to do something, it didn't make sense to me, I wasn't gonna do it. I would
Yeah,
tell him like, "Yeah, sure." And then when it would come to where I had to do that, I wouldn't do it. So I've always had that kind of rebellious aspect to myself.
I
And
see.
like I told you in our interview, my parents would always give me different stories regarding the past, and I would just be able to all I could do was just entertain the ideas. So I had to be kind of objective. I wasn't the one that the type to take sides. So
Hmm.
I would kind of like just sit on the information and wait for more
That's
information to
good.
possibly come up at a later date. So that helped my truth discovery, but I still fell for a lot of this stuff. I was still a statist. I was so happy
Hmm.
that I was in America because we're the best, land of the free, we're the policemen of the world. But then I got into Fox News once Obama was running, and because my dad was watching Fox News, so I just fell into that trap. So I was like 2008 to about 2013, I was watching that, and then I just got burnt out. It just got or discouraged. I was thinking to myself, nothing is changing. It's
Hmm.
been already half a decade now. Nothing's happening. No real improvements have been made in society. We know what some of these problems are because Obama was talking about lobbying and all this. All these people influencing elections and stuff. We're gonna get rid of the pork fat, whatever he said. And I was seeing that nothing was happening. So then I got burnt out. I got out of that stuff, and then I got into the Young Turks like a year or two later. During the Bernie Sanders when he was running against Hillary for the whatever you call it, preliminaries or whatever the hell that term is. The primaries, that's what it was. And so he was getting stolen from every single time, and they were pointing it out at
Hmm.
least. And they were saying that she's a criminal, whatever else. She's screwing him over every single state. He ends up losing. He rolls over like a dog and says, "Oh, I support Hillary." And and then Young Turks are like, "Yeah, well, we have to support him or support her now because it's either her or Trump." And I was paying to be a member, even though you can watch them for free. I was paying to watch
Wow.
these people, and I was thinking to myself, what are you guys talking about? It goes completely against everything you said for the last 6 months. I'm out. I'm canceling my subscription. You guys suck. So I got completely just both sides. I was on one side, now I was on the other. I was seeing that it was just ridiculous. And then 2016 was when I watched the Zeitgeist documentaries that got my mind blown into just, we can do things a lot better than we're doing it now.
Hmm.
Now, I don't really trust Peter Joseph. Yeah, the way that his mind is working right now with COVID, I don't agree with him at all. And he doesn't talk about a lot of stuff. He talks about some stuff. He doesn't talk about a lot of stuff. So I just took in some of his information. I absorbed some of that, but then I also added more things to that pile. I wasn't just gonna stay in that camp because I didn't for it didn't take that long for me to get out of that camp. But I do know that we have technology that we can use to create an abundance. We already have an abundance right now, obviously, with just the food that we're throwing out just in America. So we already know that stuff. So that kind of got my like me branching out of politics or out of government in a sense. And then just I guess it was really James Corbett and then Mark Passio that really kind of got that mindset really going and having it, especially with Mark Passio, having it make a lot more sense
Yeah.
because the natural laws versus the man-made laws. I was already a stoner, so I already knew that these stupid laws were ridiculous anyway. And there's already so many stories of black men getting their lives destroyed because of being arrested for this stuff. And so it already didn't make sense to me. And then this stuff just really solidified that aspect, the fact that prohibition can happen and then it's gone. And then it's good and then it's bad. But if you look at okay, here we go. Oh, watch out, guys, censor it. All right. So this okay, so we have some weed in a jar, right? Is this any different if anywhere else in the world? No, it's still what it is right
I'm
now.
sorry.
It is
Let me call my hired gang real quick to make sure they go to your house and
like this right here, it is what it is, right? Like this is what it is right now. So if I bring this to China, is this going to change? No, it's still exactly the same thing. So just think about anything, any action you take, any substance that you have, whatever it may be. It's literally the same anywhere on the planet. It's just our minds and our perceptions of that thing based off of our history, our childhood, or whatever people, adults are saying or authority is saying that makes us have a different outlook on it and think that we can just say, you know what, that's bad. You can't do that now. Yes, this is a vice. Like this can be a vice. This can be if I use it all the time, it's going to be a vice. It's going to be negative for me. It is, but it's not where it's causing harm to anybody. It's causing harm to me. And granted, if I abuse this enough, maybe I will have mental degradation to where I do cause harm to people because I'm
Mhm.
not functioning at a high capacity to my highest extent. So yeah, that's a possibility, but that's what personal responsibility is. So that's just how I see it because especially taking shrooms, that definitely helped me out with intuition spiking up and really just thinking about this stuff. Because it is what it is. Natural law, it is what it is. It's just it's been here before. It's here now. It's going to be here. Just
Yeah.
have at least if someone talks to you about it and you just think about it and you just consciously try to not do those seven wrongdoings murder, assault, rape, theft, trespassing, coercion, lying you will see stuff in your life because when I was doing my shadow work, we'll get into this, but when I was doing my shadow work last year, I was seeing 1111 a lot. I was seeing the time 1234 a lot, and those had some I've had those have some significance. And then once I stopped doing that stuff, the shadow work, I didn't see it again, which is random. Yeah, it's a coincidence, whatever you want to say. It's all whatever. But now that I'm starting to do this stuff again, I'm seeing 1111 a lot and I'm seeing all these things and I know I can just feel it in my gut that I'm on a right path. I'm doing better. I feel better about myself. So it's it's just for me, it seems so simple. And I know that back in the day when I wasn't exposed to this information, I would never have really thought about it. But
Yeah.
it really is so simple.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many people I've talked to who've gone from like leftist or right wing or who knows what, every sort of side I've talked to at this point, and they all come together here with this one topic that sort of unifies everybody and says like, hey, this is past this entire man-made system with all their laws and all their statutes which go for miles. I mean, nobody's read this stuff, not even themselves. It's crazy, but I think you really like summarized it beautifully, and I like how you sort of tie that into inner work at the end because that's what I really want to ask you about is how could we tie inner work into natural law and having principles, and what is your personal experience with inner work? If you want to abbreviate more on your personal experience with that.
Ooh. So, okay, can you repeat the first part again? You said
How do
how
you tie in inner work with natural law and the principles? So, like you mentioned before, you had personal experiences that helped you understand natural law more. And I'm assuming that sort of like ties in that question, that sort of answers the question. But if you have like particular things that you really had to work on, inner work that really helped you understand natural law even more, um, how could you bridge the connection between natural law and inner work? Is it required?
um I wouldn't. I guess it's not required, but I think it's in terms of aiding that process. I think it is extremely beneficial.
Mm,
Definitely so. I mean, all of us have to come to this understanding about natural law in general anyway.
right.
So might as well learn about it before you do shadow work or as you're learning shadow work or doing that process. So yes, I guess the way that it was tying in with me was me being a porn addict for a long time. I was using that as a coping mechanism since childhood, and even a girlfriend in like 2008, 9 was telling me that I should stop doing it. And I was thinking to myself, well, I don't feel any difference, whatever. So I just kept doing it. And it wasn't until last year, early last year was when I finally stopped doing it. But in 2020, I was a liar. I was totally a narcissist. If anything, like I might have been a sociopath becoming that way because
Mm,
this was not working really very much at all. I was operating under the reptilian brain. I was a
mm,
beast. My thoughts, emotions, and actions were not consistent with what I was journaling about because I could see the stark contrast within my own life. And so I was a liar. I cheated on her, and I didn't feel good about doing that stuff.
mm,
But because of my addictions, it was like I would think about it and I would think that this was not right. I shouldn't do this. But then this little reptile would come right up to the front and just start barking orders or barking all these different excuses as to why it's good to do it or it's worth it. The benefits outweigh the risks. And so I would still do actions that weren't in line with my true self, but it was because of addictions and it was like a thirst that I could never quench. And so it was all about that excitement, something brand new, shiny toy, whatever it may be. And then,
mm,
I would get bored with people or whatever. So I was lying, I was cheating, I was being manipulative, and I was destroying this person in the inside. And I got I got my comeuppance, and, like, so I was leading into 2021, and she told me that she was starting to pursue somebody else, and that's when I dropped all my negative stuff, my baggage, and I started doing that shadow work process, but it was at the same time of me losing her because she was still pursuing me and this guy at the same time, so it was really screwed up. So I was gaining trauma at the same time I was losing trauma or losing shadows, but, just knowing that a lot of my shadows and a lot of my regrets and all this stuff was because of bad actions, wrong actions I was taking. So me understanding natural law too, it's like I know that I've just so consistently just hurt so many people by being manipulative or lying or knowing that aren't setting proper boundaries and being firm about it. So I know I can just, oh, I feel like I can get away with this because they like me more than I like them or whatever else it may be. So like I was manipulating people. I was a narcissist at the very least and without realizing it. And so all that stuff was coming back to bite me in the butt. And especially when I was releasing porn and masturbating and that stuff, my mind started becoming a lot more clear because I was using video games and porn and cannabis and all that stuff as coping mechanisms. So whenever I
mm,
had some hard times or a breakup because of something I did, I would just go to that stuff to pass the time, to make myself feel better, to not think about it, and just to move on throughout the day and have the day pass by faster and not have to deal with all this stuff. But this was the first time that I actually had to deal with all this stuff. I didn't have all these distractions. I only had my mom, her dogs, and watching some empowering videos, maybe watching some stuff that's, just entertainment like video game reviews or whatever. But I wasn't doing that stuff anymore. I stopped gaming. Within a week or two, I just stopped wanting to even smoke because I was just releasing all this
mm,
toxic stuff and I wasn't doing it anymore. So I was noticing a difference in myself. But having that clarity made me really see the damage I was causing people because I knew internally I didn't feel good about any of that stuff. But now I could not feel good about the things I did, but understand why it was happening. Look back at the history of my life, being abused by my dad physically and emotionally, and then not having good self esteem anyway. I had a crush on this girl from first grade to fifth grade. She never liked me. So my self esteem about myself wasn't that high. I was
mm.
already a shy and nervous kid. I got accused of rape in eighth grade. I got beat up for it right at the tail end of the year. Going into high school, I was first 2 years I was being called a rapist by a good amount of people. So that definitely affected my self
Wow.
esteem. And and then yeah, just doing starting getting into cannabis in eighth grade, way too early of an age. abusing the crap out of it during that summer leading into freshman year. So that also didn't help me out. And then just and then just the porn getting worse and worse and worse. That's what it was. Like my first true love, me and her were great for the first year. I didn't even see her besides one time in 2007. It wasn't until like a year and a half later that I saw her again. But 2007, I was great. I wasn't thinking about all these women that I saw at school. I wasn't thinking about any of that stuff. I was fine. I was perfectly content being with this woman until just one day, these pathways just got cemented into a faulty pathway, and it was like back here. And then that's when I started, getting desperate and doing this kind of stuff. And it kept going on for another 13 years. So I just like progressively worse, but I can look back and see that progression. I can see some of those first bricks being laid into this foundation that I have, and
Mm.
the building and the structure I created out of it was just
Yeah.
dark and total shame, no self-esteem. I could never say anything really nice about myself. I always call myself an idiot. So but it's because I knew deep down, I could never lie to myself. That was always my problem, or it was a problem. It's not now, it's a gift, but I had depression for 7 years, 2008 to 2015, but I couldn't lie to myself. I never had that ability to just be like, "Oh, you know what, it was her loss," or like, "She was this or this." No, I knew it was me. So, I knew that I was doing something wrong inherently. But now knowing about natural law and all that stuff, and in addition to the shadow work, getting more insight in that sense and having that, being able to look back with clarity, not feel like I'm just confused about why I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think that's both been extremely valuable for me on a personal level. I'm still not perfect. Obviously, I still have a lot of issues, but I do
Don't
know
we
that
all?
I know, don't we all? And I know that I am like
No, I'm
making
saying like,
improvements.
like you said, I mean, it's a curse and a blessing. I mean, you're learning through time, and I'm sure so many people can relate to what you've talked about. But dude, thank you so much. You're so courageous, and to share all this information and to be open about it, to share all of it. Just thank you so much for that, because I mean, you never know, who this really touches. It could touch anybody. It could touch me in my future. Who knows? It could
Yeah.
touch people when, like you said, you get wrapped into an illusion over time. You don't realize that you're unconscious, and then you become conscious of it over time when you actually feel the effects of your actions, right? Which is how we learn what is right and wrong. So you really provide a perfect example of these principles at work.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll drop another drop another bomb. I've talked about this before on my
Okay.
channel, but me and my second oldest brother, like I was in 7th grade. He was 2.5 years older than me. Me and him were actually we did some stuff too. And that was consensual. It wasn't where it was forced or anything like that. But it's because of my faulty mindset and his faulty mindset and just low self-esteem and just desperation and just whatever, just thinking back here, not up
Mhm.
here. And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. Like I'm not gonna go into details, like like seriously, like I like that talk about confusion. Talk about really implanting confusion in somebody. And like I've been with guys before, like not like it was after that, but like that put so much confusion in me. And
Yeah.
because especially with the porn and low self-esteem and then not being liked by a lot of women, I would I would do that stuff because of desperation and not because I truly wanted to.
Mhm.
And I can see that now. And I was thinking, "Oh, wait, maybe I am bi or whatever," but
Yeah.
realistically, I'm not. It's just because of these bad paths that I was on for so long, and just the desperation that comes from that. And I remember talking with Andre Mitty, like at one point when I was in like my dark depression, like I felt like I was, becoming like I could see how someone could be a psycho. like
Mhm.
that's literally how like I was getting so bad that I could like literally empathize with how people do some of the things that they do. And that's
Yeah.
not a good sign. That's a really big red flag that you should kind of try to oops, turn the ship around, it's just and not continue on that path.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want to lay some more crap out there for people. Just if if people are scared about facing their stuff, look at me. I'm saying it right here, and who
Yeah.
knows how many people are going to watch this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, thank you, man. I mean, like I said, I mean, it is something that, especially, you touched on some subjects I feel like this generation has to deal with, and who knows what the future generations have to deal with. But like I know too, when I was younger, like you mentioned, sort of like the feeling of insecurity, or the lack of what is it like personal like security, as a sense like you lack self-esteem, right? Identity. We're always worried about identity. The younger generation. I mean, I'm not as young as I guess the new generation now, but I feel like a lot of the people that grew up in my generation, they still go through a lot of things you're talking about. Like I went through still not having like friends and a social life, and I still have those problems. So I have to understand like what's a healthy way to cope with that. People can take that to an unhealthy way, and then they get wrapped into illusions, and I feel like that's where they can lose off course, right? And so, and you were talking about like smoking marijuana and doing all these other things, going into the realm of vices. That also correlates with natural law. I mean, looking at vices versus crimes, something that actually harms someone else versus something that potentially harms yourself. But you said it yourself, like you still recognize like even the vices are not that great. It's like we got to work on ourselves, especially if we're going to like tell the whole world, that they got to be acting better, or say these people are the problem, or those people are the problem, and make excuses. But so many people suffer with like the whole social thing. So you're definitely not the only one. I definitely in school did not have many friends. I could definitely relate to you on that part. Like I did not have people that were always friends with me. I'm like I got so used to that mindset. Like I'm more of a lone bee and just doing my own thing. So, but then over time, I actually started getting more social again as I realized like you have to, like you have to socialize. You can't just stay in that echo chamber. So, um, let's relate that now to health, right? Like, so this, I'm assuming out of this process, you became a better human being. And of course, you're still working. I'm still working. We're all working on things, and we're not like perfectly healthy. Nobody's perfectly natural. Nobody's perfectly right. But the goal, right? And we recognize this, and we want to become more conscious is to become more healthy. So, what are some things you've done for your health? Did you change some of your diet? Did you change like exercise routines along this process or anything?
Yeah, so since 2016, 2017, that's when I really started becoming a lot more conscious about things I was consuming and starting to read ingredient labels and yeah, slowly getting away from the Walmart great value crap and then going more towards things that are a little bit more pricey, but it's definitely worth it. I can feel a difference. And then I also started doing gardening in 2017, so that definitely helped me with just being more healthy, eating the stuff I was growing, stuff like that. I was dealing with brain fog at the time. That was because of porn, and I didn't realize that, so I was trying to take supplements for that and
Mm.
stuff. But the path's kind of gone up and down. I was taking carbon 60. I don't know if you've heard of that
No, I
C60.
haven't.
It's supposed to be like a detoxifying,
Oh, activated charcoal or
anti-cancer.
something.
Yeah, it is a form of charcoal, yeah, it's
Okay.
so, I was doing some of that stuff. Um, I have this one medical device. I think you can kinda see it right here. There's the little box right there,
Okay.
but, it's called the Beamer. Jeff Berwick on his Anarchast, he interviewed this gentleman that
Huh.
had that, and he had some stories, whatever, so I contacted that guy, and lo and behold, he was, like, 30 minutes away from me
Oh
out of
shoot.
out of this guy that was on YouTube being interviewed by Jeff Burr. He happens to be a half hour away from me. So I met up with him and I tried it out. It helps with your blood flow. It gives a certain frequency that stimulates your micro
What is it like
vessels.
a blanket or something? Like what is
It's yeah,
this?
it's a mat. It's got a mat, but it's also got another attachment where it's like a magnetic. It's somewhere around here, but it's like a magnetic little attachment. So one's like a red light therapy, and
Okay.
then
Wow.
one's called a B spot, which is for focused areas.
Yeah.
And then, but the red light therapy, I've definitely noticed a difference with like my skin or my hair, stuff like that. But yeah, it helps out with your blood flow. And I was dealing with bad uh, numbness in my arms from bad posture. So I noticed a huge difference with this thing. So it's also good for recovery and just stamina, blood flow, like I was saying. But so I've been using that I got this last year, so I've been using it since then. Also the Shilajit, this is an older container, but it's Black Lotus Shilajit. I interviewed the gentleman from this company, very genuine, lab test this stuff. I've been using it for about 6 months or so consistently, and I've noticed my hair thicker, stamina in the gym is way better. I don't get depleted when I'm sweating my butt off. Normally, I would be that way. I would get so depleted,
Hmm.
but that's definitely helped me with that muscle gain, brain function. This helps detoxify, get heavy metals out of your brain. It helps basically all your organs. Helps with people that have diabetes, basically you name it. People that have a hard time with getting erections, it helps with that too. What do you know? So this stuff has been a gold, like gold for me. I've been definitely stocking up on this a lot. I was doing a lot of supplements. I'm not really doing that anymore, but I'm taking that. I'm taking what is it? Magnesium. I'm taking magnesium. It's
Okay.
magnesium citrate.
Yeah,
It's
citrate. Yeah,
yeah, it's or
very
I think or
helpful for
maybe
a
I
lot of
think that's what
people.
you said, but magnesium bicarbonate. Sorry,
Okay.
magnesium bicarbonate. So I have like a soda stream that I bought. And so I carbonate some water. It's cooled water, and then I put a couple teaspoons in there, shake it up, whatever, put it in the
Nice.
fridge. But that helps with your ATP production, which is for your cells, your cell energy production. Helps with, I guess, anti-aging and
Tons of
all this
things.
other stuff. Yeah, it helps with a lot of stuff. And we're all basically deficient in magnesium.
Yes.
So this is supposed to be a really good bioavailable form of it. So I've been taking that recently. And I also have this thing called an ozone generator. And for
Nice.
people that are kind of like around my age or older, they probably have heard of the ionic breeze that they used to have. It was like this small tower that you would have at your home, and you'd plug it in, and it would the smell of that. If anyone knows what that is, that's ozone. So they actually got rid of that stuff because I guess ozone's bad. Don't breathe it in. But I have an ozone generator, so I get a glass of water in the morning. I put that little air stone and air tube in there, and I let that sit for like 10 seconds. I drink it. It helps with constipation. It helps with oxidizing your body. It helps remove toxins from your brain. It helps with your immune system. Helps if you look up the benefits of ozone. There's a lot of benefits, but it's also good for purifying your vegetables, getting rid of the pesticides, bacteria. So for people that get a lot of vegetables, fruits and vegetables, you don't have to spray it with some fruit veggie spray. You just soak it in this ozone water for 20 minutes or so. So that's been really good for me and my health. Um, yeah, and just well, I mean, the best thing for my health was just cutting out porn and masturbating because I was getting
Mm,
so much brain fog for years and I was trying so many things to try to get rid of it without realizing that that's what it was. And that's why I felt so weak too, because
mm,
your testes create testosterone, which I didn't put two and two together. And that's why I was so weak. And I, within a week of not doing any of that stuff, I was so much stronger and I felt so much better. I was able to do like pull ups when I wasn't really able to do them before without even working out before that.
mm.
So just that in itself has helped me out tremendously. I can't really think of anything besides those few things now that I'm doing, but I was doing supplementation before that as well. But yeah, just yeah, exercising. That's definitely been helping me out. Just biking, low impact. You can get a lot of fresh air, get a nice breeze. You can coast if you need to, but just doing that, a little bit of gym stuff.
I really like that. You gave a ton of tips. So now to sort of connect this, because of course we have to involve the individual. Like the individual is necessary for this process. If, like I said, we're going to go out there being like, you need to do this, you need to do that. We don't want to be necessarily imposing our will, being like, everybody's wrong. Although we are recognizing that slavery still exists. And so going along that premise, of understanding what slavery is and how it exists through these systems we call government and authority and man-made law, in relation to natural law and how this is sort of the solution, versus the problem. Um, do you see in independent media, because you've interviewed so many people in independent media, like you've interviewed a lot of the people that I've followed over the years. We Are Changed, Dan Dix. You mentioned some other guys too that I'm familiar with, but I mean, all these guys, I can't even get in touch with them, first of all. But you've talked to a lot of these guys, and a lot of them, some of them go into action, some of them are very news based. What are your personal thoughts about this? Being an interviewer, do you feel like independent media needs to take more action, or they're not talking enough about action? They're not talking about natural law, or really exploring what these concepts are about? And do they want to? Does it provide the market for their audience?
Yeah. Yeah, because I used to watch We Are Change. I don't basically anymore. I used to
Mm,
watch Dan Dix. I haven't really watched him recently. I still like his content. I just haven't watched him recently. World Alternative Media. I haven't really watched him too much either. And so I used to be really big into them. On all this porn stuff is like recently, like the past couple of years, really made it to where dopamine was just top priority. So like I
mm,
used to do a lot more learning before 2018, 2019. But so like I still gotta slowly work myself up to
right.
be able to handle that stuff again because I sometimes I just get so bored so easily when I used to not be that way. So I haven't really been watching too much independent media. The main person I'm really watching is or listening to is Ryan Christian of The Last American Vagabond, and he does like these daily wrap up long form videos where he's basically going on for 2 4 hours just going through links and all this stuff, but he's super objective. He talks a lot about he just tries to be as objective as he can, but he has the source material himself, and he does what James Corbett does. He links everything
Great.
together in chronological order too. So for me, even though I'm just listening to him and I can't see exactly what he's talking about, I know that what he's citing is something that's actually there. He's not just talking out of his ass, and he's like, "Oh, just believe what I'm saying." He's like, "No, he's doing the same thing as James Corbett. Just take this information, run
Right.
with it. Do some research for yourself.
They're
Personal
exceptional at it.
responsibility." Yeah, and so I've been mostly been watching him, um, and I know that he isn't fond of government. He doesn't think we need it either, but he doesn't, at least in that form of video that he doesn't really talk about it. But yes, I do think that in general that this is missing because I do know Dan Dix and all these other people. So I know like a lot of the content that they produce, and they don't really talk about any of this stuff. Even someone like Derek Bros. I know Derek Bros. He's like he knows Mark. He talks about shadow work. He's talked about natural law a little bit, but things like the greater reset. I don't, unless I'm mistaken, I don't remember anyone really mentioning that, like natural
Mhm.
law or anything like that. So, I mean, I still think that it needs to be talked about more.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, besides Mark Passio and the people that are on the One Great Work Network and maybe a few others, I don't know really anyone that's talking about this and
Mhm.
making and kind of like talking about what's going on in the world, but then still linking it back to that
Right.
foundation, just as a reminder for people,
Yeah.
not just talking about it once in a video and then that's it. Just, but also just having that be part of the because I mean it's principles. It's first things first. So I mean that should be the
That's true.
foundational stuff of how we're conducting ourselves, even in my view, our content creation. But I can only really speak for myself and how I do it. That's why I try to mention this stuff fairly often. I try to have I've been having so many people from the Great Work Network, about 8 people now, 9 people. So yeah, that's where I've been gravitating towards because it really is so fundamentally important. And it's the more time has passed, the more I've just seen
Yeah.
how accurate what these people are saying is because I've applied it in my own life. So yeah, I definitely think that alternative media needs to talk about this stuff more and talk about action. I know that they're talking about prepping a lot more and building community. I know Ryan Christian, he does do a lot of activism on his own,
That's
in
good.
his everyday life.
Yeah.
So, but he doesn't talk about it too much, at least in his long form videos. But yeah, I definitely see that there is a need or a gap that needs to be filled up a little bit more. That's why I like seeing someone as young as you are, just seeing you creating content and at the caliber that you're making it, holy cow! And the people that you've had on too, just having Mark Pastor, that's the one person I want to get on. Like, if I can get one more person on my show, I want to get it on my channel. I want it to be him. So, like, you beat me to it, but you had a great interview. I loved it.
Mhm.
So,
You beat me
but
to all the rest, so it doesn't matter anyways.
yeah, but yes, I think like when I interview people, I try to have them explain their process of how they got to be content creators because there has to be still so many people that have a lot of information and they
Yeah.
haven't been activated yet. So yes, all
And we
these people,
encourage you.
and we encourage you, please do so because like we were saying, we are change and all these other people, yeah, they talk about some action and all this stuff, but they're not really talking about natural law at all, basically. And so many people that are going to watch this know this information. We can talk to them. We can try to yell at them all day to start talking about this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's their channel.
Right.
It's their business basically. So you step up, you do it yourself because you can do a hell of a job. I'm sure of it. The first jump ones are going to be, I'm sure, rocky. Just like you said, when your first videos, you're like, I don't really want to, I don't really want to watch them too much because they're like, I don't want to delete them either because it is good to see that transition or that process. But yeah, it's going to be a little rocky at first. You're going to be nervous. You're going to have all this stuff. I used to take kratom all the time before my interviews just to calm down a little bit, not have all those butterflies, be all anxious. So it's not like where I'm just so calm and cool and collected just naturally. No, I'm nervous when I'm doing live streams. I know it's live and I can't make a mistake, or I can't make a mistake. I just don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to look like a fool. But yeah, there's so many people that aren't activated. I think that's the key. Like because I did answer your question based on like people that are making content now, but the answer would be for people
Yeah,
not to yell at them to do it, but for them just to do it themselves, because I'm sure so many people know a lot more than I do, and
great answer.
I'm still doing this.
That's a great answer. It's like encouraging other people to be the philosophers, not just be dependent on the previous philosophers, or encourage people to be new content creators, not just be dependent on the old ones. I mean, hey, they're great. They inspire us to be better, and that's why we're outsiders. That's why we're unique, and we are in this new time and age, and we have to evolve as humanity because we have to take what was previously there and say, well, here's something else. It's like here we ended one form of slavery, now let's end the next. And this is the process of evolution. You did that too with your inner work, did you not? It's from an individual to a collective stage. This is what we're doing as humanity. And so I thank you so much for sharing all this great perspective. Is there anything that you want to mention to sort of tie in a lot of the concepts we talked about you feel like is really important that people need to know? Personally, that anything that you think independent media has to cover, or you just want to share with the audience for the End of Slavery Summit, talking about this idea of slavery, perhaps anything in relation to that either.
Yeah. I guess tying it all together, first thing is just yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror. I know Brandon Spencer had a really good segment on my show where he talked about shadow work, and one of the things he would do is get out of the shower and just look at himself in that vulnerable state of being just naked and just looking at yourself and really just, taking yourself in. You're
Mm-hmm.
very vulnerable at that stage, just taking yourself in. What are some things that you're avoiding? What are some things that you're just procrastinating on? What are some things you're numbing yourself from? What past instances are you numbing yourself from? And just really looking at that. Even recently, a couple days ago, whatever, I'm avoiding stuff. I'm choosing to look or watch stupid videos instead of t- sitting with those. What's my gut telling me? I'm getting this huge knot in my stomach, and why is that? I'm just gonna watch some mindless stuff on YouTube or whatever and not think about it and just hope that it goes away. Well, guess what? It hasn't gone away.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, even me on a personal level, I might be talking about this stuff, but I still need to take a lot of what I'm saying to heart more so, more consistently. So, like, if you're getting that constant aggravation or anxiety about stuff, just think about it. Try to write stuff down. You and I both mentioned journaling as a huge thing that could be very beneficial for numerous reasons, not just for shadow work or just like pinpointing inconsistencies in your life, but just in a general sense. It helps out your brain and just in general, just being able to write and do all that stuff and really contemplate and think. So journaling is huge, but just focus on yourself first and foremost, because the way that you are acting now, if you start or if you need to make changes, positive changes, you're going to be responding to the world in a better way. You're going to be able to take people's comments or whatever and be able to not react the same way, not to get that same trigger that you used to and just blow off the handle. You can see someone and be like, I can see why this person's acting this way. What's going on in their life? And then you can have empathy for people or whatever. Just the way that you're going to interact with the world and the ripple that you're going to have in that pond of all these other ripples, it's going to be different. They're going to feel difference around you. Animals will feel different around you. They have that heightened sense or sensitivity to that stuff. Just your own personal life. That's all I can really have be like the main point, because that's gonna make the whole thing. If you change your worldview perspective, you're gonna change your world. If you and then you can extrapolate that out. If you influence somebody else and you change their perspective on the world, you're changing their world, and they're gonna make different decisions that way. So being the example, like Corey, like he's so well spoken. He makes me want to stop saying and like when I'm when I'm talking, because he's just so eloquent and
Not true.
consistent. And what I don't hear you saying or like all at all. You're doing a great job, man.
Now you're gonna make me
So
say it.
no, please don't. You're
Be
so
too
good.
self-conscious.
No. But yes. So just doing shadow work in any sense, there are some good books out there. One good book that I would really recommend is The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. I got that from my therapist back in 2015, and it basically teaches you how to meditate without even using the word meditate, and different ways of looking at your thoughts, being more observant, than just taking it literally and as gospel and truth and fact, but seeing it for what it is. Like I can notice when I'm thinking here and then when I'm thinking back here. I can notice when I'm more observing and when I'm getting lost in my thoughts. Like I can feel it because
Mm-hmm.
I've been so used to observing that stuff. So I can tell when I'm getting out of my out of the reality and just into my own head. So it's just stuff like that. Just and then just think about some of the vices that you're doing. Think about the comforts that you're doing. Like me with video gaming, I can stem that back to childhood. I need to like I know that that was a coping mechanism. I know that weed is a coping mechanism. I know that I used to be a former cigarette smoker. So like this sensation of smoking has been something that's been hard to drop. But it's not it's not the action that you're doing, but it's how consistently you're doing it and when are you doing it? Are you doing it when when you start to feel a certain way? Or are you doing it just in general on an everyday basis? Because that has
Yeah.
different contexts, has different meanings. Like for me, I would do that stuff in really bad situations to avoid it. So I was using coping mechanisms in a very unhealthy way because those weren't helping me out. Those
Yeah.
weren't fulfilling things for me to do.
Nicholas, I would have never thought you've gone through everything that you've shared with me. I'll be honest. You don't look like you've gone through really all of that. Like I know looks can be deceiving, right? But you look healthy, you look bright. I mean, you look great. So I'm just putting that out there, and I just want to compliment you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's also the things I'm taking too, but yeah, but also just working through my stuff because I'm when I interviewed Daniel Shane Maddox the second time, I just had him back on. He's my most recent interview. Um, he even said that I looked different from the last time I saw him, and I was in a bad state last year. I was in a really bad state. I was ready to kill myself last year,
Mm,
literally. Like I was just in such a bad state, and I was getting back into gaming and smoking, and I started vaping again or vaping, and so like that was just
yeah,
not helping me out at all. But so I was in a really bad state. So now I feel a lot more lighter. So I guess that's
great.
also coming out.
I
But
encourage
I do
people to check
appreciate
out
that.
all your stuff, man. I hope
Yeah.
everybody checks out your interviews. You have a lot of great stuff. I like how you also like remember bits and pieces of the interviews you've done because that also helps with your interviews and your talking because you're like this person mentioned this person. It's like you just get the best of all worlds. But
Yeah.
I definitely recommend people check out your interviews because you do like to ask challenging questions. We were talking about that before. How you like to look at their past interviews and ask stuff that has never been asked. So thank you for doing all the great work you've done over the years, and I encourage anyone else to do the same. Apply a lot of tips that you heard in this video, and hopefully this can be a little bit of inspiration for you on your journey. Thank you, Nicholas, for everything, man. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's really such a pleasure and an honor, honestly. Like I'm so pumped. I can't wait to watch everyone else
yeah,
that's in this summit. And I can't wait to listen to some of these people because
yeah,
I try to get so many inspiring people on my channel. That's why I remember so many things because so many things that these people say, like they have so much good information, so many nuggets that I personally take. So a lot of things maybe I don't remember, other people will see it and they'll say, well, "Holy crap, it's so relevant. It makes so much sense." So I can't wait to watch this because I'd
yeah,
love to reach out to some of these people and have them on because I always try to have inspiring people that will
yeah.
help influence others in a positive way.
We don't intend to be inspiring; it just happens that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so
absolutely.
much. And there's if anybody wants to see all the other speakers as you mentioned, they can go to nita.one/summit, nita.one/summit. This is the end of Slavery Summit. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.